There are two new reports out this week that are totally tearing down efforts to sustain the big lie and providing yet more evidence, as if we needed it, that the big lie is just that. In Arizona, a group of election experts blasting the so-called audit of ballots in Maricopa County as partisan and detailing the many, quote, fatal flaws, including letting workers there who are supporters of QAnon and Stop the Steal handle ballots. And in Michigan, the GOP-led state Senate is out with a report that finds no evidence, zero, nada, zilch, for claims of widespread fraud in the 2020 election there. They conclude this, quote, citizens should be confident the results represent the true results of the ballots cast by the people of Michigan. Joining us now is Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Madam Secretary, I wondered what you thought when you read this morning.
Well, it's certainly a vindication of the truth we've known for a very long time now, that the results of the election of 2020 were an accurate reflection of the will of the people here in Michigan. So it shows that no matter how many ways you look at it, if you're willing to look at the facts and the data, it underscores the truth. And I just hope, that State Senator Ed McBroom was a Republican who led this report, that others in his party follow his lead and tell the truth to their constituents about the security and integrity of our 2020 election, and that we stop seeing them support legislation based on lies and misinformation that this report widely debunks.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because the report debunks the notion that there was any fraud in Michigan, yet Michigan is still moving forward with voter suppression laws.
Exactly. There's 39 bills going through the very same state Senate, the very same state Senate committee that the author of the report sits on. And so I think it's important that we acknowledge the truth and the integrity of the 2020 election, which this report does. But now we've got to act in furtherance of that truth. And in doing so, not enact laws that would undo the very policies that led to our success in 2020, which the vast majority of these 39 bills do. Yet they are still moving through the Senate. They are still moving through the State House. In fact, just in this very moment, they're being voted on in the State House, some of the pieces of legislation. So it's time to stop the misinformation, but it's also time to pull back efforts to pass laws in furtherance of that misinformation. And this report, I hope, is a first step in that direction.
I guess you just articulated the whole conundrum. I mean, you now have Republicans putting their name on a report that is sort of the good housekeeping seal of verifying there was no fraud. But those same Republicans are still behind laws to do something. What? To predicate it on a lie, make it harder for people in Michigan to vote. Is there any chance of slowing that down in any state absent federal voting rights legislation?
It remains to be seen, but it is, we certainly need the federal government to step up and protect states like Michigan, like Arizona, where there still are people even now acknowledging that there is misinformation, but potentially supporting legislation to undo the very policies that enabled such high turnout. I think if moving here in Michigan, if they move forward with the bills, for example, what that now underscores is that this legislation is not a reaction to voter fraud. The legislation is a reaction to voter turnout. And we have to be very truthful with our voters, with all citizens, about what the legislation now is. And this report helps us do that. But it remains to be seen whether others in the state Senate or in the state legislature will embrace the accuracy of this report and act accordingly. I hope that they do. And we also hope that the federal government acts to protect voters, which is their historical role and their constitutional obligation at a time like this, when democracy is the most important issue at stake in our country right now. So we remain hopeful that the federal government will act. We remain hopeful that the state legislators in our state will do the right thing. But we've got to also keep calling for them to, on all fronts, to do the right thing, because our democracy is at stake, and the right to vote for every citizen is in the middle of all of this.
I spent some time in the Republican Party, and they won't stop. And I don't know of any antidote for these laws. There are 389 of them making their way through 48 states other than federal legislation. You mentioned the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution is the word filibuster. Should Democrats put that aside for voting rights legislation?
Well, it's certainly, yes, I think so. I think now is a moment, as it was in 1965 with the passage of the Voting Rights Act, as it was even in the 1860s, and when the amendments to the Constitution, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were enacted, where sometimes you have to do the right thing, which we saw yesterday is there are the votes there to bring the For the People Act up for a discussion over 50+1 with the Vice President. So we need to have that discussion. The federal government has to play a role in protecting the states and protecting voters in every state. And at a time like this, where so many states are not just passing laws to undo policies that enabled voter turnout in 2020, but passing laws to strip authority from the election administrators who stood guard to protect the voices and the votes of every citizen. This is one of the most perilous moments in our democracy today, and it's an all-hands-on-deck moment for everyone to play their role, and the federal government is a critical player in that partnership.